Her and another woman always come to the technology meetings. But I forget what she looks like.
So welcome, everyone. It is 6 o'clock. We currently do not have a sitting quorum of the Planning Licenses and Development Committee, so we're going to give a couple of our members just a few more minutes to join us, and we'll hopefully be starting soon. Okay, so we're not going to leave him live on.
Good, because I don't know which button it is.
What is he doing
He's able to observe remotely, but he cannot speak remotely over Zoom, and so we have the conference call on. Person, I would prefer that we just connect now and be on.
Well, if he connects, we have.
Oh, sure.
Oh, you did?
Never mind.
No, there's not.
Brain fog. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a little subtle, I can show you. It's like, I mean, there's a lot of planning, and a lot of anticipation. It's like a big weight off my shoulder. Also, it's just like.
There is, however, now remember, there is a telecommunications.
Everything went perfect.
Right.
I was like, how did this happen? Wonderful. I got it.
That one applies to the.
Counselor Giacomo?
And I'm pretty sure it applies on private.
Yes, hello.
It does.
Hi, this is Rebecca. So thank you for calling in. I hope you're having a great time. We are,
Oh, yeah, I've been listening to the last 10 minutes or so.
Okay, so we're gonna leave the conference call for you so you can speak, but if you need to speak, just speak up for, hey, I want to speak, and I'll put the mic live. Right now, it's not live, so you need to just give me a second.
I do risk 2 minutes.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so you don't want, I mean, I'm on Zoom right now.
The problem with Zoom is we have an equipment malfunction, so you can see it here, but we can't hear you on Zoom. We have a problem with that. So that's why kind of you're sitting here at the table with your colleagues, just a phone.
You're right next to me, buddy.
So,
Hey, Bill.
Yay.
Counselor Giacomo, we're gonna be able to see you on the screen momentarily once the meeting begins, but we won't be able to hear you. So you can, still raise your hand on the screen and I'll be keeping an eye out for you. But you're getting a place at the table in the conference.
Okay, thank you much.
I can do my own.
Mike, if you start getting feedback, you probably want to mute your Zoom. Your sound there.
Yeah, my Zoom is muted already. So I'll just be using my phone mute.
Okay, maybe.
You bet.
Is that what it said?
I think we're all in Kings, so I don't know a whole lot. I grew up in Dover. Dover, New Hampshire. And we had a tremendous French population. They had their own school, grammar school, and they had their own church. And, the Pacific Railroad was all 5,000 people were. And the mills closed down.
That's not fair, Mike has a beer and strudel. You know?
Remind me, currently after midnight.
That would be good.
Not a lot of either of those things.
Because that's what we did in office. We didn't have a choice, so we're in this. This is what we're up to. Some people will go with this, some people will go with This is a, for the country. So, it looks like Disney. Congratulations.
Over here, Gladys.
So that email that you got is like no good I ever had.
I know, thank you.
All right. All settled in?
Yeah.
Good evening. The hour of 6:08 having arrived, I will call to order this regular meeting of the Planning, Licenses, and Development Committee. This meeting is being broadcast live on the City of Keene YouTube channel. The video is also posted on the city website by the end of the next business day, barring any technical difficulties. Copies of the printed agenda are available in the wall pockets just as you entered the meeting room. The public and other city councilors will be recognized to ask questions and make comments on agenda items under discussion. After being recognized, all remarks are to be made through the chair. I will not recognize an individual a second time until everyone who wishes has had a chance to speak. Anyone who wishes to address the committee is asked to go to one of the microphones in the room and identify themselves by name and address prior to speaking. On the subject for 5G wireless, I will be limiting the length of time to speak to 3 minutes. Speakers will be granted an opportunity to speak a second time after all members of the public have been heard a first time. Written comments from the public will be accepted at the clerk's office until Tuesday at 1 p.m. I will now call to order this regular meeting of the Planning, Licenses, and Development Committee and declare a quorum present. Councilor Giacomo has requested to be allowed to participate remotely. Councilor Giacomo, can you please state the reason for your request?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am representing the City of Keene and our partner city of Einbeck, Germany, currently as the ex officio member on that committee.
Well, thank you. Unless there's an objection, this request will be granted.
I'm sure you have to ask if there's anybody present within the location.
Oh, yes, thank you. Do you have anyone present in the room with you at that location? Councilor Giacomo?
Mike, can you hear us?
I'm not sure if we lost our connection. All right, if we can get Mike back.
Is that supposed to be lit up? I can't tell.
Looks like he's still on.
Might hit the mute button on and off again and see what anyone has.
He's on.
Counselor Giacomo, can you hear us? Can we get him up on the monitors?
If he can't, if we can't speak to him and hear him speak to us, he can't be a member of the committee at this point. We have to be able to communicate.
Yep. Counselor, can you hang up and give us a call right back on that same line? See if we can connect again. Counselor Jones, can you disconnect the conference line?
Hit the phone button?
I think so.
Yeah, it's disconnected.
He can't hear us.
Now he can't because I cut him off.
Okay.
But when he calls back, I hit the speaker button, right?
Have him-
Or just the phone.
Tell him to call us.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I think he's dialed now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Jim.
So we're gonna hold up a sign saying, go back.
Exactly.
That's good.
Good to have a meeting about telecommunications.
Oh, yes.
Mike, are you there?
Indeed. Hello.
Oh, good.
Okay.
Fabulous. Okay.
Welcome back.
From the other side.
Let's not do that again.
Okay.
So, Counselor Giacomo, can you identify if there's anyone else in the room with you?
Yes, thank you. There's no one else in the room with me. I'm in the house of my host family, the Eggers.
Okay, thank you very much. So, unless there's an objection, we're going to grant this request. I don't see any objection from the committee, so Counselor Giacomo, you are welcome to participate remotely this evening. The minute taker is participating remotely also. The committee members, please be sure to turn on your microphones when speaking. If the minute taker is unable to hear us, they will ask you to speak louder or turn your microphone on. We can all try to make sure that each of us are doing that this evening. So we do have a couple of items to get through on our agenda. And the first one is the Keene Kiwanis Club's request to use city property for our tree lighting ceremony. This is an annual request from the Kiwanis Club. I did hear from the Public Works Director earlier in the week. He is unable to join us this evening, but he did represent that the Kiwanis Club has held their protocol meetings. Is there anything else that we want to address from the city? That's come up?
No concerns related to this event. They've had their protocols, and we recommend approval of the request.
Okay, wonderful. Do we have any questions from the committee? I think we've all been here before for this request. Anyone from the public wishing to address this? Come on forward. Please state your name and address for the minute taker.
Hi, my name is Margaret Bruce. I'm the secretary for the Kiwanis Club of Keene, and I'm here tonight representing the club in case anybody has any questions. We did have one item on the protocol meeting that we were waiting for a decision, and that was whether we could use a PVC pipe to cover the electrical wires that go from our power box to the tree instead of looping them across the top of the fence. And that the person that was at the protocol meeting said he would check with Mitch and get back to us. So I was wondering if there's an answer to that.
So I don't have an answer to that, but the motion will allow the staff to work out any of those details beyond this evening.
Okay. Do you have any questions for me?
I don't have any questions necessarily, but I do have a couple of comments. I know that this event is usually very well attended, and it's really special to have here in our town. And anytime we can involve children in our community and bring them downtown, and I know the fire department also participates, and it's
Yeah.
it's really nice that you guys are able to coordinate this every year.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
So any other questions? Seeing none, I would ask for a motion. Oh, Counselor Jones?
Let me go.
Do you have a motion?
I would move to recommend the Keene Kiwanis Club be granted permission to use downtown city right-of-way on Friday, November 25, 2022, for the Tree Lighting Festival from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m., conditional upon the signing of a revocable license and indemnification agreement, submittal of certificate of liability insurance in the amount of $1 million, listing the city of Keene as an additional insured, and the petitioner complies with any recommendation of city staff. In addition, the petitioner is granted permission to erect a holiday tree on the main Marlborough Winchester Street roundabout. The petitioner agrees to absorb the cost of any city services over and above any amount of city funding allocated in the fiscal year 23 community events budget. Said payment shall be made within 30 days of the date of invoicing.
And I'll second that.
Thank you. I have a motion by Counselor Jones, second by Counselor Johnson. Does anyone have any questions on those motions?
Can I ask a question?
Counselor Jones.
There used to be the tree at Main Marlborough in Winchester on the circle. There used to be no electricity there. Is there still no electricity, or has that been rectified?
Yes, come forward.
Hi, Margaret Bruce again from the Kiwanis Club of Keene. What we use are battery-operated mini lights on that tree. We've got 5 sets of 200 lights that we string on it, so we don't need the power.
Good answer.
Great.
And I change the batteries when the lights start getting low. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions? All right, so since we have a member participating remotely this evening, all of our votes will be done by roll call. Counselor Giacomo, we're going to end with you, starting with Counselor Jones.
Yes.
Counselor Mosley, yes.
Counselor Ormerod, yes.
Counselor Johnson, yes.
Councilor Giacomo, yes.
And that is unanimous. So we will see you back again this holiday season. Thank you. Next item is Ron Roberts and the Keene Snow Riders requesting permission to run snowmobiles in the right-of-way along Criff Road from Ashwillet Rail Trail to Winchester Street. So do we have Ron with us this evening?
I'm Jeremy Evans. I'm the president of the Keene Snow Riders.
Oh, wonderful, Jeremy. Thanks for joining us. Do you want to
welcome.
tell us a little bit about your request?
Sure. So for a number of years now, that the Keene Snow Riders have accessed trail systems through and around the Keene area. What we're asking for this year is to renew the crossings, which we've had for a number of years now. There are no changes. I'd be happy to entertain any questions that you might have about those crossings, as well as any questions you have about the Snowmobile Club in general.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Don't go too far.
I won't.
Do you have any questions from the committee? So again, this is another item that we see here regularly every year at PLD, and we do communicate with staff and have not heard that there has been any incidents or any issues. Is there anything you want to follow up with, City Manager?
Yeah, there are no concerns related to this request. I did speak with the Public Works Director, and while we don't hold a protocol meeting, this was reviewed and we're comfortable with this motion.
Wonderful. Do you have anyone from the public who has any questions? All right, seeing none, I would ask for a motion. Councilor Ormerod?
The Planning, Licensing, and Development Committee moves to recommend the Keene Snow Riders be granted permission to use the following locations on city property for a snowmobile trail. The right-of-way along the north side of Criff Road, from Criff Road to Winchester Street. City property identified by tax map numbers 116 040 000 000 000 214 003 003, sorry, correction, 214 003 000 000 and 118 001 000 000, the crossing of Winchester Street at Criff Road, and the crossing of Production Avenue approximately 200 plus or minus feet south of New Hampshire Route 9, as well as access to the Class 6 portion of the old Gilsum Road, starting approximately 1 mile from the Gilsum Road line and going north the premises for the following purpose: for a snowmobile trail under the following conditions. Said use shall commence on December 15th, 2022 and expire on March 30th, 2023, and is subject to the following conditions: the signing of a revocable license and indemnification agreement and the submittal of a certificate of liability insurance in the amount of $1 million, naming the city of Keene as an additional insured. In addition, the Keene Snow Riders, Inc. will be responsible, including cost, for the installation and maintenance of all signage and marking, which will be in accordance with the snowmobile trail standards published by the New Hampshire Department of Business and Economic Affairs, that all signage markings installed shall be removed from the city right-of-way and city property when there is no longer any snow cover. No structures, including buildings, shelters, lights, displays, walls, etc., shall be permitted with the city right-of-way or on city property. No parking of motor vehicles or trailers and no catering services activities of any kind shall be permitted within the city right-of-way or on city property. Grooming shall not extend outside the right-of-way of Cliff Road. Snow windows shall be groomed to provide adequate sight distances and a gentle sloping approach at all road and driveway intersections. No part of the city street, paved surfaces, may be used by this off-highway recreational vehicles or an OHRV, or their operators for any purpose other than direct crossing, and that Keene Snow Riders, Inc. shall be responsible for the repair of any damage, including costs, and the city right-of-way and property shall only be used when there is snow cover.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Councilor Ormerod, second by Councilor Johnson. There's a lot of information built into that motion. Do we have any questions on that? Councilor Jones.
Can I just address a Scribner or a misread or whatever it was? In the first paragraph, starting approximately 1 mile from the Gilsum town line, I believe I heard from Gilsum Road.
It does
When the
say
council-
Gilsum Road. Do we need a correction?
No, down more. Approximately 1 mile from Gilsum town line.
Going north.
Yep. It
I
is-
heard from Gilsum Road.
So the previously in that sentence, there is a reference to
There's a
Old
reference
Gilsum
to
Road.
Gilsum Road,
so-
correct. Yeah, that was the mix-up.
Yeah, so as long as we have the minute taker has that clearly marked. Great. Anyone from the public have any questions? All right, seeing none, I would ask for a vote, starting with Councilor Jones.
Yes.
Councilor Bosley, yes.
Councilor Ormerod, yes.
Counselor Johnson? Yes.
Councilor Giacomo, yes.
And that is unanimous. We're moving on to a memorandum of understanding regarding a retaining wall on Woodbury and Washington Street. And I believe that we'll be hearing from the city manager to address this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this evening, I'm looking for authority from the council to execute both an MOU with the community college and execute some necessary cross easements. So River Valley, or the community college system, is the owner of the property located at 438 Washington Street. And the college has been in the process of attempting to sell that property. As you know, they moved on campus to the Keene State College campus a while ago, and that building has been vacant. So during this process, questions have come up regarding the ownership and repair of an existing retaining wall located on the property adjacent to the Woodbury Street. The wall sort of meanders back and forth between private property and the city's right-of-way, so crossing in different locations. From the research conducted, we believe the wall was constructed to support the Roosevelt School's construction a long time ago, and it's been transferred since then. But it's not really clear. So we've had some meetings with the school, and the school and the city have come to, or city staff have come to an agreement. We both have interest in this wall and the continued stability of the wall. If the wall were removed, it would likely require resloping, which would likely impact the viability of the existing building, which is why we believe it was built to begin with, so that school could be built. And similarly, if the wall failed or was removed, it would impact Woodbury Street. And so on your desk this evening, and I'm sorry, Councilor Giacomo, I didn't email these to you, but on your desk this evening, if you're not familiar with the wall, I did provide some photos of a recent engineering evaluation that had been done of the wall, completed by the school. So we have indicated to the school that we have no interest in assuming ownership of the wall, but we do have an interest in the associated guardrail and sidewalk located within the city right-of-way. Therefore, we've come to an understanding and would ask the council to grant me the authority to execute an MOU with the community college system. The college agrees to repair the wall itself and keep ownership. The city agrees to repair and do the ongoing maintenance of the guardrail and sidewalk located within the city right-of-way adjacent to the property. And if you look at some of those pictures, you'll see the guardrail is currently along the top of the wall, which is how they became integrated initially. As part of this agreement, I'm also asking permission to execute some cross easements for construction and future maintenance of the wall by the college, because they'll need to come onto the right-of-way, and of the guardrail and other Woodbury Street improvements that the city will need to go on their property to address.
Do we have anyone here from the school that's addressing this evening? No? Okay. So I do have a couple of quick questions for you. Do we have, as part of this agreement, a time frame in which they need to do these repairs?
No, and in fact, we're not sure that the repairs will be done before they sell the property. It's unclear. What they are looking for is to have this agreement so that whoever purchases the property will at least know that they will agree to make the repairs and that the city is responsible for the guardrail and the sidewalk.
Were we given any indication when this engineering report was made as to what the lifespan of this wall is? It's in pretty terrible condition.
So surprisingly, it's not terrible.
Okay.
Yeah, so the engineering report was done by H.L. Turner, and they classify it as in good condition, but it does need some
Surface
work.
repair,
Yes.
maybe?
And so I don't think it's going to be extremely difficult for them to complete that work. I think the harder part will be for us to take our guardrail system and create a new system adjacent to the wall. But I don't think it's in terrible condition according to the engineering report we saw.
Okay. My one request would be during the process, I would like to maybe retain some ability to do our own engineering analysis if we have some concern, because it does support that entire roadscape. And if it were to fail for some reason, there would be a lot of residents left without access up there.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And so we did talk about really working together when they're repairing the wall and we're doing our work. And so they were very open to working together, and whether that meant working together using the same engineer or having us do some of our own analysis.
Okay, wonderful. Do we have any other questions from the committee? Councilor Jones?
Yeah, if they sell the property, does the MOU carry over to the purchaser, or do we need to renegotiate?
That's the intent, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions? Anyone from the public have any questions regarding this? All right, seeing none, I would ask for a motion. Councilor Johnson?
Move to authorize the city manager to do all things necessary to execute a memorandum of understanding between the city and the community college system of New Hampshire with, noticing that we'll want to add an H to the word with, respect to the retaining wall abutting the property owned by the community college and adjacent to Woodbury Street, and further to authorize the city manager to do all things necessary to negotiate and to that must be execute, permanent cross easements for the construction, and further maintenance of the wall by the community college, and for the improvements to Woodbury Street to be made by the city.
Second.
So those two corrections let me put in. Okay, thank you.
Second.
A motion by Councilor Johnson, a second by Councilor Jones. Does anyone have any questions on that motion? Anyone from the public? Seeing none, I would ask for a vote, starting with Councilor Jones.
Yes.
Councilor Bosley, yes.
Councillor Ormrod, yes.
Councilor Johnson, yes.
Councilor Giacomo, yes.
And that is unanimous. So we're moving on to our last item of the night, which is the communications relative to public health concerns of small cell wireless facilities and possible revisions to ordinance O-2019-18-A. And there were a couple of communications that came in regards to this. One of them has been on more time by former Councilor Terry Clark, and the other was recent communication from Councilor Filio. I don't see Terry Clark here, but I do see Councilor Filio. Would you like to join us and address your letter?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Randy Filio, Keene City Council. The letter you have in front of you, I wrote at the request of several neighbors of the towers that are being built. They had various concerns, and I'm sure a couple of them will address those with you. Mainly the concern that I had from the ones that initially contacted me and those that have since contacted me is the potential of these towers being upgraded to 5G. You know, as we know, there's been studies showing that 5G can be harmful, especially in residential neighborhoods, and that is one of the major concerns of the neighbors. I realize, and I've been reminded that we did create an ordinance, but I also will remind the council that ordinances can be changed, which we've done many times, and I would certainly have no fear of writing a new ordinance if need be. But with that said, I think I'll stand down here for a few minutes and allow some of the neighbors to speak if they would like to. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Great. Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Jones. Get started.
Just for clarity, because there's some discrepancy among city councilors and talking to them, this ordinance pertains to public property, city-owned property, I should say, right?
Rights of way.
Right.
City owns rights of way. It has nothing to do with anything going on private property. I just want to make sure that's clear.
Madam Chair, if you don't mind. That's correct. There is an Article 13, actually, in the Land Development Code, which is part of the zoning ordinance, which applies to telecommunications facilities. It's an overlay district, and that applies in areas around the city that are on that include private property. This small cell wireless ordinance and the orders that the FCC orders that we proceeded under apply in the city's right-of-way only.
Thank you, City Attorney. As part of my research getting prepared for this meeting tonight, I did ask the staff to draft a list of installations. So I can see how many of our small wireless facilities, and I'm going to identify them as that right now because we can, a lot of these terms, 5G, 4G, are used in a marketing way by the cellular community. And what we're really talking about tonight, I think, are the lengths of radio waves that are coming out of these towers. And I think that's what's important to recognize as we talk about this tonight. But what I can tell you is that the city currently has, I believe, 5, and then with the potential of 1 more application in the city. But there are 2 state property wireless facility constructions, which we have no regulation over. And then there are a couple of private property wireless facilities that we do have rights to regulate from an aesthetic perspective, but not approve or deny the individual's right to construct. So what we're talking about tonight are the small wireless facilities that are in the city right of way. So I just want to make sure that we're clear about that. I did want to give everybody a little bit of background as to the timeline how this has been addressed by this committee in the past. I've been fortunate enough to be able to see it from the beginning through to today, but I know we do have some new members. So the ordinance was introduced in 2019, and that was in response to the FCC's putting forward the requirement that we have no authority to deny the installations of these facilities in our city rights of way. And City Attorney, please definitely jump in and correct me if I get anything So what the committee spent a very long time educating ourselves and listening to the public's concerns and to our attorney's perspective that in the absence of an ordinance, we were really left completely undermined, that the FCC, federal regulations, put us in a situation where without some sort of ordinance in place in our city, that these small wireless facilities could be constructed in any manner that these companies would see fit. So we would have no discretion on size and color and shape and any setbacks or placements. So it was really pertinent that we at least have something on the books, which did end up happening and was adopted in May of 2020, and I believe that was a unanimous city council vote. In January of 2021, we are only allowed, once a topic has been visited during a calendar year, we are not allowed to revisit that topic until the following calendar year. In January of 2021, former Councilor Clark did place a letter asking us to revisit that ordinance in light of a state report that came out with some concerns about some of the potential medical liabilities in regards to these facilities. And there were some very strong opinions in that report. I believe we did have someone from the state who came and spoke on behalf of the majority opinion in that report. And we did sift through a lot of that information. We did find that our ordinance at the time did meet a lot of their setback requirements that they had suggested in that. And there was some additional legislation that was brought before the state that might have made some stricter state-backed ability for us to regulate some of these items. And we've sort of been holding this on more time, waiting for some sort of support to come down from the state saying that we could or couldn't do something stronger, or that there was some information in this report that they felt was worthy of getting behind. I've recently asked the city attorney to give me an update on those,
And I have a new update on that.
and I would love to hear that.
Well, as was pointed out in one of the letters, it's true, on October 6th, HB 1644, which had been referred to interim study, they did meet over the summer to discuss and negotiate, or probably negotiate, but to discuss. And that bill does contain some additional setback requirements, 1,640 feet in various locations. So my understanding is that they're going to put that before the House again during this legislative session for action. Whether it is adopted or not, we'll see.
Okay, so that's really important, because I think about a couple of weeks ago when we had this conversation, it was still sitting sort of in limbo without any meat for us to be able to get into. So I think we definitely should all be keeping an eye on that. And we are getting late in the year, so regardless, we will have an opportunity, I think, when those decisions come out of the state to revisit this again in January. These are all living documents, and we'll have opportunities to revisit them regularly. Do we have anybody on the committee who wants to speak about their opinions on where the ordinance stands currently? Or do we want to jump right into the public comment? Councilor Jones?
Well, I have a lot of things, but I'd like to hear the public go first. But can I just ask on section 802-205, location standards, where we use 750 feet from any small cell, 750 feet from school, preschool, daycare, and so on. Where did that number come from, and why do we have that number?
I recall.
Is that from the state?
No. We looked at a lot of different resources with respect to drafting the ordinance back then, including some of the rationale for some of these numbers, and these seem to be sort of consistent around the country with respect to what other municipalities were doing with respect to the foot requirement. So we basically used that. There was not a lot of guidance in the FCC rule with it. The FCC rule actually leaves some of that, a fair amount of that actually up to the discretion of the municipality. So that's sort of where we got that from, which is one of the reasons why it's interesting, because if HB 1644 is enacted, it would put a specific state limit within that of 1,640 feet, and we would need to adjust our ordinance if it passes. But that's where the numbers come from, the foot distances come from. The only caveat I'm going to throw in here about 1644, even though the FCC rule specifically does not preempt state law with respect to the application, and there is a state law that applies in this context. It's RSA 12K. We've talked about that before. The question then becomes, and I don't know the answer to this question, but if it were challenged by the industry, the 1,640 foot limit, and because it's around residential areas, parks, playgrounds, hospitals, nursing homes, daycares, if the industry were to challenge that and claim that it materially inhibited, the opportunity for them to conduct their business, that challenge would probably be heard by the federal district court. I don't know what the answer would, and that would be against the state, actually.
And I just want to preface this by saying this is not my area of expertise, but it is my understanding that these radio waves do not travel far, which is why these facilities need to be constructed in sort of a grid in order to be useful. Councilor Giacomo, do you have any data on the distances that these antennas are useful? I know you're a little bit more familiar.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. It would be, almost inconceivable for a telecom to not challenge a 1,600-foot setback, being as the range of these on clear land without hills or trees in the way, which New Hampshire's kind of full of, is around 1,500 feet. So anything above that is you're virtually invalidating them. So if you wanted to get any usage out of high bandwidth cellular service on places like schools, hospitals, and all the other places where people would want to have high bandwidth internet, 1,500 would basically invalidate their use entirely.
Okay, thank you, Councilor. And to Councilor Jones' point, I don't recall the exact conversation in regards to where these specific numbers came from, but I do recall that we did address these vulnerable sort of applications, nursing homes, schools, childcare, and we did ask to have those increased at the time the ordinance was written, but stay within those guidelines that would still make the facilities work.
And I have other questions, but I'm going to wait till the public's done.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, so I'm going to open this up to the public at this time. One at a time, I'm going to acknowledge you, and please come up to the microphone, state your name and address for the minute taker. I am going to have Councilor Ormerod just keeping an eye on the time. I know there's not a ton of you. We weren't sure how many folks were going to come out today. We've definitely seen a lot of people who have opinions about this. We've received a lot of written comment that was available to us this evening. And so if the 3 minutes doesn't get all of what you would like to address with us out, once we get through everybody, we will have another chance for people to speak. So at 30 seconds, he's just going to let you know that we've met that time requirement. It'll give you a couple more seconds to wrap up your thoughts and ideas so we can get to the next person. So do we have anyone who'd like to start? Don't be shy. Come on up.
Hi, Doug Johnson, 20 New Acres Road. It's encouraging that there's further investigation going on at the state level. It also sounds like this committee and the council is aware of the science behind it. There's hard science, published articles. I've been reading about the small cell technology since 2014, and I've been concerned about it. And I'm encouraged that you're all aware of it and well read on it as well. I think what I wanted to say is that on New Acres Road we have 16 homes. I was able to speak with 14 of those homes, 13 of which are highly concerned about the antenna at the end of New Acres Road and Allen Court. It's well within the 750 foot. I mean, the entire street is within 750 feet of that antenna. The hospital, I think, is 500 feet away from that antenna. So it's understood that it's currently for 4G use. Do we know if when the conversion to 5G or small cell are we going to be made aware of that timing? Or or are they just going to flick the switch and turn it over?
That's a great question. I'm just going to keep notes of some of these, and once we get through the public comment, we'll come back to some of them, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Yes, come on forward.
Hi, I'm Ron Clace, 37 Allen Court here in Keene. I had a couple of questions. I don't know if I can ask them all at once or.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're going to get to some answers probably at the
That's
end, but go ahead and
perfect.
ask away.
Is there a contract with the cellular company or whoever it is in the city reference that property? And if so, how long is the contract?
Okay.
Is the city compensated from the cellular company or whoever owns the tower for having it there on the city right away?
Okay.
Then in the future, will other people be allowed, other companies be allowed to put equipment up on top of that same tower to magnify the amount of EMF radiation that will potentially come off of it? You know, from having multiple people and users up there. And then that's all I have for right now. I'll wait and get back
Okay.
later. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And we will definitely get to some of those. There are some of those answers written right into the ordinance, I think. as we
Sounds
go
great.
through.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Come on forward. We have the microphones live right at the table too, if you'd like to just have a seat.
I think that's a better idea.
Yeah,
Can't apologize for my height.
take your time.
Just the way I came. My name is Jean Ann Farah, and I live at 59 School Street here in Keene. Our neighborhood is being deluged with asking for variations for so many things right now, and this is just one more. I've been trying to educate myself on small wireless facilities, the FCC, the TCA, and the RF, and I at least know what they're about a little bit. But we're very upset that they have been chosen to be put on the very corner of the historic district and in the middle of a neighborhood, which is, in spite of the fact that we're called a downtown transition neighborhood, it is still a neighborhood. We have young families that live under it and across the street from it, and we have people in homes and offices all over that street. And I have found out that radio frequencies where at one time they asked were to be put on telephone poles, but that's been changed because people objected to the appearance and the aesthetics. So now we have these large posts that we've actually been down on Winchester Street, checked the one out there. It's not awfully unattractive, but the fact of the matter is that the FCC has said that the radio frequency that emanates from the tops of these are in great excess for what comes out of the bottom. And they would have to put signage up that would probably off-put people and frighten them because they don't want to live under this stuff. And they also found that it affects the health issues of people and the environment. We don't need it. And in fact, their top place for placing them is not in neighborhoods where they're inhabited by people. So this is the case with our neighborhood. And I know there's a time limit for the length that you can respond to the application. And we have spoken and visited Court Blomquist, and he has assured us that it's close to the end of
30
the
seconds
time.
remaining.
Pardon me?
30 seconds remaining.
Okay, I won't talk much more.
It's okay.
If I can think of what else I wanted to talk to you about, I'll come back.
Yes, for sure.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. Anyone else wishing to speak with us?
My name is Peter SPF. I live at 29 Middle Street, and I've lived there for about close to 50 years. I'm 91 years old. I really don't want such a construct right next door to me. The most favored positioning of these kinds of structures is not in residential. In fact, that's the least preferred. And this is a residential area. You called it something else under your zoning regulations, but it's residential. That's what it is. And there's no need for that being there at all, really. There was another person in the neighborhood, Mrs. Thomas Sevastano, who wrote a letter back in July to this board and stated very good reasons why it shouldn't be in our neighborhood. So we'd appreciate your consideration. It's not something that has to go there. It doesn't have to go there. There are plenty of other places where it'd be more suitable, and we'd appreciate that consideration. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
I'm Anthony Tremblay. I live at 67 Summer Street about a block and a half from here. I think that when we first learned that some of these things were going to come into the community, those of us in the neighborhood were very concerned about how you could have any kind of setback meaningfully in an area where the property, the homes are very close together, and the neighborhood itself is very compact. And the interesting thing about these neighborhoods, our neighborhood in particular, is the changing demographic that's going on in our neighborhood. We've seen influx of young families, which is something those of us that have been here, we've only been here since 1984, so we're newcomers compared to Peter SPF's, but it's we semi-old timers are thrilled to see young families coming into the area, and the bus stop right on our corner, it's just great. And this is evidence of the fact that there's a desire within the community to live close to town, to live in town, and to put these towers in these tightly tight together neighborhoods like ours, where you can go 200 feet and you've passed through 4 or 5 or 6 front doors, right? So this is really a concern, not just for us at one end of the street, but for the entire neighborhood. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. And do we have anyone else who'd like to speak to us?
Hello, good evening. Thank you for opening to the public. I am Michael Zoll. I live at 18 Summer Street. I'm maybe one of the new families referenced. We've been here 3 years, have 4 children, and although there are new families that have younger children, I'm just really happy to be in Keene and in this neighborhood. It's a particularly wonderful place. I own a cell phone. I'm sure you do too. Who doesn't? But I would like to say that as I went and read the Public Works information, I was struck by the same thing that Mr. Espy has said, that the preferences for non-residential districts. So I'm not sure what got mixed up here, if it's because of the zoning change in the last 3 years, but the siting of this tower, which is 30 yards from my residence, very, very close, is surrounded by residences. I mean, the buildings nearby, they're all residences. I'd also like to make the emphasis that we're in the historic district and have to go through quite a bit of movement to, improve our homes in certain ways, and I understand that and I'm supportive of that, but to have a cell tower that isn't exactly aesthetic, I would argue, put in the historic district is a disconnect as well. So again, to summarize, I think This is a residential area, albeit the transition zone may have carved out some differences to that. There are plenty of people within a rock's throw of that tower, sleeping and living. And I would argue, as my neighbors have, I think there are better places for a cell tower than in the middle of a residential area in the historic district. Thanks for the time tonight.
Great, thank you. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to add?
I'm Robert Farrer. I live at 59 School Street. The placement of these towers has been spoken to quite clearly, I feel. I understand they have to be in the public way. That puts it someplace between the sidewalk and the road. But that being said, there's public ways all over town that aren't in the middle of a lot of homes full of kids. Now, we've gone through a change in that neighborhood where when we were young, Jeanette and I, there was something like 27 boys in that neighborhood because they'd all come into our yard to play. Then, of course, they grew up. So for a while, people got old like us. And now there's some young people moving back in with kids. Why, just as Mr. Zoll said, it's a neighborhood. We don't need radio frequency radiation into homes. I actually questioned that on the one on Winchester Street. It's right by a dorm. Doesn't make a lot of sense. Somebody's got to pay some attention. The FCC can mandate all they want. There are places to stick their bloody towers. Maybe we'll be criticized for having poor reception to 5G. Well, that's a tough break. Move away if your phone is more important. But I think the City Council needs to pay close attention to what's happening to neighborhoods. It really is important as a community is built on neighborhoods, not on businesses. Businesses do fund them, but they don't cluster around like people do. I'm not very clear, but I did the best I could. Thanks.
No, that was wonderful. Thank you for those comments. Do we have anyone else who'd like to speak to us tonight? Okay, well, did you want to follow up? Did you remember what your final item was?
I will be careful.
Okay.
I've got a minute. Again, my name is Jean Ann Farah, and I live at 59 School Street. And what I really have to tell you is I'm kind of sad at whether or not the local people have anything to say about anything anymore. Because the FCC comes down with laws, then the state comes down with it and reinforces. By the time it gets to the people, it's a done deal. And especially if people don't pay attention every single day with what's going on. We have a neighborhood of people who have lived there for a long time, and there's a heck of a lot of history in that neighborhood. School Street has been operating since the 1700s. We have a load of people who have been quite famous in this community, and we respect what they've done for it. We have Jonathan Daniels, we have J.A. French, we have mayors, we have people who have been the backbone in this community that have served on councils, that have been doctors and involved heavily in the health community. We don't want anything to happen. We love the people, the homes. We have people walking the sidewalks in School Street just because they love the way it feels and the way it looks. And we'd like to keep it that way. If it's necessary, I'm willing to go back to work with my preservation and see if I can create a heritage community. They have such a thing. It's called a neighborhood heritage community in our neighborhood. And if it would be of any help anywhere, I don't know as it would have any teeth in it. But I'd be willing to work with my neighbors to create that if somehow we could keep it. Thank you.
I appreciate that offer. I think that there are definitely have been a lot of things here that have come up, and that I'm gonna, throw a lot of them back to the city attorney and see what some of his answers might be for us. One of the things that I would like to point out is I know that a lot of you are coming from your community where an application has been made, or where a tower has been constructed, and we, as this committee, really have to focus on the terminology and the rules as these towers apply to the whole community and not just each individual neighborhood. But there is a process here that we have for applications to come in, for notifications to neighbors. There's potential for we don't have authority to regulate all of the comings and goings of what the FCC is requiring of us, but we do have some ability to work within the process. And I definitely want to make sure that you guys all understand what your ability to participate in the process is, and when these applications come in, what the notifications will look like, and how you can have your voice and get a lot of these concerns heard. Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
So do we want to start with some of that? Yeah.
So there was a question related to whether or not there are contracts with these facilities. They receive a license. So if you look at page 12, but it's 19 of 25 in your packets. It's section 82-10. The license term is 1 year, automatically renew 1 year from its issuance and each year thereafter. There's language in there that talks about when it can be revoked, but in essence, I think that answers the contract. It's a license. And then in terms of whether or not the city is compensated, we do charge a fee, but with fees, that we can only charge to recoup the expense that it takes the city to process an application, review an application. And so the fee is $270 or approximately. The other compensation the city would receive is property taxes. All structures in the right-of-way that are not owned by the city, so telephone poles, things of that nature, are assessed a property tax. The question about can other companies be added later?
Yes.
Locations provided.
Yeah. Yes.
So, and we did, when it comes to co-location, we did talk about this a lot in the original formation of the ordinance, because there was a lot of conversation about are these cell companies going to partner together, and will they use the same tower and have it hold up for each individual service? So would we see a Verizon and an AT&T and a T-Mobile all using one tower? And the answer is that they don't play well together. So because we don't want to see 3 poles stacked next to each other, we did have a provision that we would require, if it is feasible, to co-locate on a single pole, which at the time we felt was more prudent than having 3 or 4 poles in one area, or littering a neighborhood with these things. So that was the council's perspective on that portion of it at that time. Did we also have any rules specific to historic districts?
Well, part of the problem
with it is that these exist in the public right-of-way, and the zoning ordinance does not apply in the public right-of-way, and neither would the historic district regulations apply in the public right-of-way. That was a huge concern at the FCC, which they just sort of passed over.
So when the original draft language for the ordinance was written, that was part of the conversation?
Yes.
City manager.
The other question that was asked was related to whether or not we would be notified if they change from 4G to 5G, and no, we will not be notified.
Okay, and do we have any, can we talk about what the process is for, like, when an application comes in? I know a lot of it's spelled out in the language, but just for the public's awareness, when an application comes in, it goes to Public Works, our Public Works Director reviews it. There is a stamped engineered report that comes along with that, which is, I think, on an RF engineering report, which, do we have any information about that report or what it entails?
My understanding is, and this is where we are a little hamstrung by not having, unfortunately, the Public Works Director here, but essentially, they have to provide an engineering certificate that basically says that the unit complies with the FCC requirements for radiation emission at that point. We accept that certification. We do not review it. We don't have the technical capacity to review it, but that's all they are required to provide is that certification from an engineer.
And so that certification relates back to what the FCC's requirement
Yes.
for radiation
Exactly.
emission is. Okay. And so,
And one tune-up I would like to make to the city manager's comment, the annual, there is an annual licensing fee of $270, but we do charge a $500 fee at the time of application for the review of the application.
okay, great, thank you. So now we have an application in, we have a stamped report back from an RF engineer, and at that point, what happens to this application?
We provide written notification to abutters or individuals who are within 200 feet around the location of the proposed installation, and an opportunity for them to comment back to the Public Works Director with respect to the application. So there is a notification requirement that goes out. They have to provide the Public Works Director, they being the applicant, have to provide all of the information that's required in the application requirements, which are set out in detail in the ordinance. And what happens if it's an incomplete application, remembering that there is something called a shot clock that applies to this. The municipality has a certain number of days, depending upon whether or not it's a new construction or a co-location application. It varies anywhere from 45 to 90 days, I believe. That shot clock can be paused, if you will, if within a certain time period the reviewer says to the applicant, your application is incomplete, and then has to provide the applicant with an opportunity to submit whatever is missing at that point.
So I'm just going to pause you right there, because I feel like what I'm hearing from the community in the room tonight is that there's some concern about the decisions that we're making about where to locate some of these items, and whether we might have an interest in having one of these applicants transition that pole maybe, I don't know, 300 feet in one direction or another in order to create a bigger buffer over a residential community, considering that our ordinance says that residential communities should be last on the list of appropriate places to place these. So if an application comes in and the Public Works is reviewing and abutters have been noticed, if there's some concern from the abutters, what is their ability to express those concerns, and if they disagree with Public Works decisions, to appeal that decision?
My understanding is that this has occurred,
Okay.
and that the Public Works Director has requested that a particular installation be relocated for these types of reasons. What we have discovered at this point is that with the applicants that have applied to us, they are very willing to work with the city and the Public Works Director. The underlying test is to the point that they would object is that if the proposed new location sort of inhibited the technology's ability to do what it needs to do in that particular area, that's when they would push back.
Okay.
But at this point, they have not done that.
City Manager?
And just the notification is to a 300-foot radius, so we draw a circle. And then the appeal under section 82-209, appeals of the director are made to the court of a competent jurisdiction. There's no administrative appeal of the Public Works
Okay.
decisions.
And so I know that the Allen Court facility has been constructed. I've seen that with my own eyes. I did pull up a Google map of 21 Summer, which is, I believe, where the current application is. Has that been under construction? Or is that application still in, we are not?
I don't know.
sure. Okay, so what, just to give you guys a little bit of closure, what I would suggest is, because I know that application is at least in-house with our Public Works Director, who we do not have available to us tonight, please take a lot of these concerns that you've expressed and some of your ideas about maybe a potential relocation that might be a compromise to the attention of the Public Works Director. And if the city attorney is correct and we have applicants who are willing to work with us, and maybe there is a better placement that could become available. And, I think that that's part of the process of working together in the community is trying to, if we can't necessarily fix the problem, but putting the people together who can.
But my only comment on that is that negotiation or discussion usually happens right at the beginning.
Okay.
And to the extent that design and all of the permitting has been accomplished at this point, it may be that the applicant would be very reluctant at this point to alter that. And the shot clock still applies.
And my speaking with the Public Works Director, he did indicate that he was accepting this as a new application because the location had changed,
Good.
I believe.
Thank you.
So there might be a little bit of flexibility in there.
Great.
But definitely follow up with him. I can't speak to whether or not, what will come of that. But I just want to be clear for everyone. Councilor Filio.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks to staff for answering some of the questions. My concern here is what I see as a lack of transparency. I'm not saying, anything was intended as a lack of transparency, but it's always been an issue since I've been on the council is transparency. Now, I understand it goes to the Public Works Director, but from there, did the council know? Is the council notified? No, because they don't have to be. Well, I don't hear we don't have to be notified, but I want to be notified. When we're talking here, well, the Public Director had it, the Public Works Director had it. We're the elected officials of the city. The buck stops here. The blame should stop here. We need to be kept updated, especially something as important as this. When we're just saying it goes to the Public Works Director and then off it goes, I don't find that as acceptable. Now, I know you don't have to tell the City Council, but I want to know when an application comes in, the second it comes in. We can be notified. There's nothing saying we can't be. So I want to be. I don't want constituents calling me anymore saying, what's this about? And I go, I don't know. Let me check with the Public Works Director. That's unacceptable. I want to know, and the council should know what's going on. We need better transparency in this city, and this is one of those issues that proves it. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Councilor Filio. I would like to say that I often get asked questions that I don't have the answer to, and that's fine. I am not an expert, and I have a family and a job and a lot of responsibilities, and I cannot know everything that is going on inside the city at all times. I don't know that I would want to know every time someone wants to construct a telephone pole or ask for a variance for a garage renovation. But what I can do as a counselor is always find out the information, because what I do know is who to ask. So I think that that's the way that I want to bear the responsibility of my council seat. And I know Councilor Filio can always, knows exactly who to ask as well to get these questions answered. It is uncomfortable sometimes when people address you and you don't have the answer at your fingertips. But if you give us a little bit of time, we will. I think we have a great group of counselors right now, and we all try to get back to people. What I would like to hear from the committee, after hearing a lot of the discussion from the public tonight, is where you guys stand on the current ordinance that we have before us, And if you think that there's any eminent tweaks that we should be looking at, or if you think that, I know we've talked about potential legislation coming down from the state, like where do you think we should stand on what we've got before us this evening? Councillor Johnson?
Thank you. I have a question, Madam Chair. There was a person that had 3 questions, and I'm wondering if all 3 of those were answered.
I believe so. Was that Mr. Clace?
Yes.
Okay,
Did
thank
Did you feel like your questions were answered?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you kindly.
You're welcome.
I also, well, I have the mic on, I also kind of rear up a little bit with anybody with their SCC or whatever, how they can come in and just tell us what to do. There's a side of me that says, wait a minute, you know, we don't agree, but I don't know the whole politics, and so I'm still listening.
Okay.
I really appreciate the folks coming in.
Yes, absolutely. Councillor Ormerod.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This might be a question for legal, but what if we were notified? Not that we should be, but what if we are notified of every application for a 5G that comes in? What would that look like? And could we even stop it or negotiate? What exactly would we do to prevent something like this?
There are 2 parts to your question. The first part is the notification to the city council is something that the city manager and the public works director could do. It could be an informational roll-up of these as they come in. That's easy to do. The second part of your question is the legal part of your question, and that's the more difficult part of your question. From my perspective, as you know, the last time we went through this, and we went through it in great detail, the FCC has put municipalities in a box. There is a reason why, I can't remember how many hundreds, there were a lot, who challenged it in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeal back in 2018 and 19. And basically, the Ninth Circuit upheld the FCC's authority to issue this rule, which reached right into every municipality's public right-of-way and gave us very limited opportunities to do anything about small cell wireless facilities. I know that's really hard for people out there to understand and hear, and I agree with that. And a lot of municipal council around the country agreed with that. The court took a different position. So the short answer to your question is there is very little that we can do to stop the rollout of these towers, unfortunately, at least on the municipal level. You know, if folks really want to have some engagement, they should be engaging both through the state and through their federal election process, remembering that the FCC basically are members that are appointed by Congress, and that's kind of where all of this is arising from.
Thank you for that. Councillor Jones?
Thank you. If you remember, back in 2020, I tried to amend this and limit it to 4G, and I was in the minority. I lost to that with that amendment, but I still think there's an opportunity for transparency, and I know all the applications go through the Public Works Director, and that's what it says. But can we amend it to have anything above 4G go through the council process, even though the FCC says we have to allow it? At least it makes it transparent. We have a process, and then we educate the people from that neighborhood who come and ask. It makes it a public process where it's not a public process right now. And I'm not saying 5G, I'm saying 4G, because there is 4G pluses out there. They play games with that. So can we, I think we can get around the shot clock by doing that.
No. I'm sorry. The blunt answer to that question is no. Once an application is tendered into the city, we have a period of time to act.
But if we're sending it to the council process, that's...
Does not stop the shot clock.
So
Because
I'm
the
not gonna make the
council
amendment.
process, You could have no process, you could have the council process, you could have the process that you created. The point is, this is the part of the FCC rule. Once an application is submitted to the city, however that application is submitted, it could be submitted to the city clerk. It starts the shot clock, and we have to act within that period of time. If we fail to act in that period of time, then the applicant would have the right to go and have the court just order the installation at that point.
So is there any way we can make this a more transparent process? As it was explained, it goes right to the Public Works Director, the shot clock starts, and he's got to approve it. He's got to read the plans, and can we do something to make this more transparent? Because this is going to keep happening every time a tower goes in a new neighborhood. People aren't aware of the rules. They're not aware of the ordinance. They want to know what to do. They're calling their counselors. The counselors are saying, I don't know. It was the Public Works Director who was in charge of that. Can we make it more transparent? Is there a way to do that?
And I would like to point out to what Councilor Jones is saying, that if you look in the audience tonight, the members who are here with concerns are all people who have a tower adjacent their community. You know, we have lots of communities in Keene that don't have these towers, and none of those folks showed up to have an opinion because it hasn't been brought to their front door yet, right? So I think that part of what I was trying to get to in my questioning is, what is that process if it's not happening before this committee? And we've changed our licensing process in general. And we have a new licensing committee that has the PLD committee as an appeals board now. And so even those licenses, those are being heard in front of a committee, and there's potential for conversation. So if I understand that we are under this time constraint, and that I'm sure we chose the Public Works Director as the most expedient means to an end to meet those time requirements and review the applications, or as a city staff person, then when those notifications come out, like, what is the opportunity for the neighborhood of Summer Street or the neighborhood of Allen Court to voice their opinions with the Public Works Director and the applicant, and have a potential for some sort of compromise or negotiation there? Is there any way to accomplish that as part of process?
I'm thinking.
That's okay.
So
I know I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking. The Public Works Director was chosen not for expediency, but because he is in charge of many of the uses in the right-of-way.
Okay.
Whether it's a driveway permit or any sort of work that's happening, it's related to what they do at Public Works, and so he does a lot of licenses and permits in the right-of-way. I'm thinking about, whether or not there's a way we could certainly communicate to the public when the applications come in, council and the public, to be more transparent in terms of applications that are currently being reviewed.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I'm thinking is the 300-foot radius. That's part of the ordinance, but there's nothing to say that we couldn't adjust that. That's something that we could go further with in terms of more notification requirements to make sure that, because really 300 feet is not a very big distance, and someone may be living on a street and they're not going to be notified. And honestly, that's what brings people here. They get that notification. And if they're getting the notification and being part of the process, at least they know about it and they are in early on. The rest of that I have to think through a little bit more because of the time process.
I'd like to just draw a parallel because part of, again, going back to getting my feet back under me with all of this information, that 300-foot notification is, I think, one of the keys to a lot of the frustration that we're going to hear from the public. So the question was, where does this number come from? And my understanding was that it parallels a variance notification, a butter notification.
That's not actually true. That was the mistake I made.
Okay.
It's 200 feet under the zoning ordinance for that.
So-
That's why that was in my head. The city manager was right, it's 300 feet.
So the zoning is 200 and this is 300. So it's actually greater than. And so at the time, it seems like, okay, well then we have gone above and beyond what we would have done for like a zoning variance application. However, the piece that we do not have is that a zoning variance application would be notified and then have a meeting held in front of a board where the public would have an opportunity to weigh in. And that's what's not happening now. I don't know if that can somehow be modeled, maybe not formally in front of a board, but through the process at Public Works. If there could be like, this is going to be our Zoom meeting, or this is going to be our meeting time to address this particular application, and have that information in the abutter notification as an opportunity. Would be reasonable.
I guess the only comment that, if you don't mind, I'm going to make on that, again, is sort of the problematic position that the municipality is in. The public, when they go to the planning board, or when they go to the zoning board of adjustment, there is some expectation, and rightly so, that a different decision may be made with respect to it. Now, with respect to some of the tinkering around the edges, yeah, perhaps that's all true. But to the extent that the public would like to come and stop it, that's not something that would occur.
Okay, great. Councillor Giacomo, did you have some comments?
Actually, a question. Being as this is a utility like any other, do we have a notification process when a telephone pole goes in?
This is actually not a utility. It is not a statutorily defined utility, these entities. They don't fall within those requirements at this point. They are specifically excluded.
So they are their own entity completely, of which there is nothing similar.
Essentially, yes, for this particular purpose. They are not a statutorily defined utility and don't fall under those rules.
Okay, if they're not a utility, is there anything else that currently lies in the category that these ones lie, that these items lie in, the small cell facilities?
No, they have their own specific statute under New Hampshire law. It's RSA 12K, in addition to the FCC's rules. But the one thing that the Ninth Circuit did provide to municipalities was greater opportunity to deal with the aesthetics of these installations. The original rule basically said that on the aesthetic side of the house, you had to treat these essentially the same thing as public utilities with respect to what they could look like and all the rest of it. And the court said, no, these are a different category, and we have greater opportunity on the aesthetic side of the house, but not so much with respect to the regulation and control.
And that makes sense to me, I think, and this is the rest of the comment on that. I mean, it sounds like most of the problems that neighbors should have with these are going to be on the aesthetic side. It's a pole with some things protruding from it in a neighborhood, and I can understand how that would be certainly something that aesthetically we would want to make sure is doesn't stick out like a sore thumb. And I think that's exactly what the ordinance that we passed last year did. That's what it accomplished. That's what its goal was to control the aesthetics of these and to the greatest degree possible that we could. And some of the location, the tree of most desirable to least desirable locations that was in that ordinance also kind of spoke to that. We wanted to make sure, we'll put them in areas that are less populated, and again, the aesthetics will be more hidden. So I can completely understand that, but I believe that the ordinance that we have, that is what it was designed for. And I don't think adding additional language to it is really going to be necessary in this case.
Madam Chair?
Councillor Johnson?
Yes, please. As you just spoke.
Can you turn the microphone, please?
As you just spoke, Councillor, our audience didn't agree. You made that comment and a lot of heads shook no. So I just wanted to share that with you if you weren't able to see that.
And I think that my inference from the reaction from the public counselor is that my guess is that the biggest concern is less aesthetic and more wireless radiation,
Yeah.
which is, the heads are shaking yes, right? So, and that is what we're hoping to get out of these studies, and that we're hoping to get out of maybe some state regulation, that if the state agrees that these studies show that there's this wireless radiation that's unhealthy, that they can set limits that we can then enforce. But until we get some sort of guidance from coming down from the state, we don't have authority to regulate that. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, well, if I may speak to that then, if that okay, Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
Much appreciated. So I think that is another problem that we have coming into this, is that we are looking at this, and it sounds almost like we're operating under the assumption, despite what the FCC studies have shown, that this is dangerous, that this radiation is dangerous. Radiation is a very scary word, and it is not something that anyone would voluntarily say, yes, sign me up for radiation. But understanding how this radiation actually works, these electromagnetic waves, which is what they are, especially in the 5G frequency, they have been shown, they have been proven that they are not harmful, and the studies that have been created that show harm are deeply, deeply flawed studies. And the issue is with this New Hampshire, the whole new gathering of the folks up at the New Hampshire state level that are trying to push this through. It's the exact same people that have been pushing these studies the entire time. There is no new information. That entire committee did not discover anything. They merely had a committee that was stacked with people that already believed this, already believed that it was harmful, and found things to satisfy what they already believed. The New York Times had a great piece on this. The Atlantic had a good piece on it. The Wall Street Journal had a piece on it. And I've reached out to independent investigators as well that have done a lot of research tracking the source of this 5G, the worries about 5G radiation and 5G health hazards. And it tracks back to some very strange places. These are not good studies. And those that are good studies, and there are quite a few, and believe me, we were sent a list of thousands of these, and I got through dozens. In the time that I have had over the last year, much further on this topic, the studies that did actually pertain were actually good studies, did not even pertain to this field. It was very strange, the list of studies that we were given on this, and it was like they were dumped on us and hoped that we wouldn't read them, and find out that some of them had a sample size of 6. That's not scientifically valid. It was remarkable that the state committee really went with this. It's really surprising to me, and I, for one, I do not want Keene to go on record putting any credence into this.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Ormerod.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a comment that would back us up about 10 minutes in the conversation. So I'm willing to defer that if we want to discuss more of Councilor Giacomo's point.
Well, I think that the unfortunate truth is that there is so much information out there on this that supports both sides of this. And what I feel like our committee's decision is very limited in what our authority is sitting here tonight. So regardless of what our individual beliefs are, I read through this study from the state myself, and I think it was a very long, wordy study, and it did ultimately indicate that their recommendation would be to pull wireless out of schools altogether, and not just 5G, but 4G and internet, and any sort of wireless is potentially harmful. And we are all bathed in wireless signals every day. in this room, sitting here, I can see the wireless antennas and our phones are emitting wireless frequency. And there, I can't imagine that there's not some sort of humanistic effect happening. But, I feel like, is it our position? I'm not a scientist. I can't 100% say. But what I can do is I can try to make the best ordinance for our community that protects people in the best way without having us end up in court. And also look to my representatives at the state who can hopefully take that information and regurgitate it and give us some policy that we could follow or make adjustments with in our own community. Because without that, it sounds like we don't have a whole lot of reasonable leg to stand on. So, Councilor Omar, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, well, thank you. I want to make a suggestion that there might be one thing we can do, perhaps, to improve the notification process, and that is to move the perimeter from 300 to a wider, so there'll be more people notified. That's one thing that we can do. It's within our power for that. And we also have to make it clear that the stopping this is the domain of the state and the federal government. You've made that very, very clear, but we can improve the notification. That's one thing I think we can act on. We can't decide the science yes or no. Everyone has their own opinion on that, but I think we can act on something.
Great, thank you for that. Councilor Jones?
Thank you. Something I want to, it has nothing to do with the ordinance, but I want to throw it out there. I'm sure you all hear from CC Doucette all the time, who's a technology attorney. I know I get emails from her ever since this original ordinance came out. And she did call me a couple of years ago, and she was telling me about a program in Ashby, Massachusetts, where they have monitors where you can measure the radiation. They're at the library. You can lend them. They lend them out, and it puts people at ease. It's a good program because people don't know what they're getting. That's the fear that our public is dealing with right now, the unknown. And I'm not recommending this right now. I'm just telling you that I heard about it, and it's something I would like to look more into. And I think it could help the public put some of them at ease, because right now they don't know what they're getting.
I definitely agree with that. Councilor Giacomo, did I see you with your hand up?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, good science is not here for us to like or dislike. That's my issue with this entire thing. We have to stop pretending that this is an opinion. This is not the opinion of people that this is one thing or the other. There is good science and there is bad science. And the good science points in one very specific direction. And giving credence to bad science continues to perpetuate the myth. And that is a huge problem. And we cannot embarrass our city by giving it credence. And I understand that, again, what people believe and they feel and they think, fine, but there is good science. And that is a fact. There is good science, and it has proven some of these things. It has proven that, the effects of hypersensitivity to electromagnetic radiation is a fully psychosomatic effect. It's a real thing. It can cause harm, but it is not physical harm being caused by radiation. It is a psychosomatic effect. It is a mental condition, not a physical condition. It is physical eventually, but because of the mental side of it. This is really not something, we can't keep pretending that this is something that both sides have equal weighing. If we're inviting anti-vaccine people in, and giving them equal footing to proven scientific methods like vaccines. This has happened. This is the equivalent of what we're allowing here to happen. And it is seriously problematic for the city.
Thank you, Councilor Giacomo, for the clarification too.
Right.
Councilor Ormerod?
This is my experience with degrees in chemistry, physics, and engineering. I would concur with Councilor Giacomo's assessment that does not seem to be sufficient information out there for us to prove that it's harmful. But we need to do what we can to improve our notification process.
So I have a follow-up question for the city attorney. Just one second, Mr. SPF. If we have an opportunity this evening we have a couple of different options of ways that we can move forward. If we ask that we have some amendments made to the notification process and those amendments pass, would those amendments be passed? Do we think the time frame would happen in this year?
I'm not sure I agree with
I know, Tom looks very perplexed.
Okay.
But here's my suggestion.
Okay.
So the ordinance specifically references the 300-foot radius, but it says that the city shall mail public notice to all persons. So it's us, not the person completing the application. So that would be the minimum, but we can create a more restrictive on ourselves.
Well, I'm going to push back.
Okay.
Okay.
The pushback I'm going to give you is that if the applicants object to that, which they could very well at that point, they're going to hold up the ordinance and say, no.
Okay.
I mean, if we are going to do it, and I think it's certainly appropriate
Yep.
to do, I think we really do need to hard code it.
So what I want to get to the meat of it, though, is we're getting late in the season. And I now have enough experience to know how these things work. And we have legislation hanging around at the state that might give us credence to modify this ordinance again in 2023. If we start this process for this minor amendment now, and it doesn't pass until next year, would we then not have the opportunity to revisit this again until 2024? Or do we have the time within this calendar year to affect the proper change to this ordinance that we would be looking for? Should we be revisiting this when the state comes down with some more information as a whole, or should we be doing it now?
Well, I guess there are two things. You could do the notification now, the change in the notification. I mean, I suspect that's a fairly discrete change in this ordinance. That could go in fairly quickly and probably be approved before the end of the year. And then if the state came down, so that would take you out of the calendar year problem, and remembering that it's still a rule of the council, but it's a 2/3 vote to override. That would put you into the next calendar year. I can't imagine that the state is going to take any more legislative action on this thing. If it does, it's not going to be until next year. So I think that the time periods would work out if you would like to do that.
Okay. And do we have an opinion of the committee as to what that number would be that we'd like to increase it to?
Talking about footage or what?
A butter notification distance from a tower.
Yeah, so footage, yeah. You're looking at me, I don't know, I'm no expert.
So,
Councilor Ormerod.
in terms of city blocks, what is 300 feet? I mean, what would one city block be? How many feet would that be?
6
Just
houses.
depends on the city.
Yeah, that's right, but what we're doing here, it's,
So approximately 6 homes. Councilor Jones said 50 feet of frontage. per-
Right.
So in a congested area, it would be approximately 6 homes. So I would say you might be at a block.
So, I'm sorry.
Councilor Jones.
Yeah, why don't we consider the same number that we used with schools and stuff and use 750 feet? It'd be consistent.
So I'm going to get specific here, just because, again, I received a letter from Mr. Clace, and who was not notified about the Allen Court Tower, and after doing some research, his property is about 850 feet from that tower, so he would still have not been notified, and still is here expressing concerns. I don't know if 1,000 feet would be reasonable. The radiation lasts approximately 1,500 feet from the tower, which is what the guidelines would potentially be from one tower to be able to speak to another tower. So all of these homes are going to fall within that 750, would probably be about halfway, and then 1,000. At that point, you're at a very reduced wireless radiation effect.
It's fine by me.
Yeah.
I see our counselor has.
Councilor Giacomo?
Yeah, the way that radiation works is it goes out in a spherical motion, so it actually, the intensity of the radiation actually reduces by using a cubic formula. So it's not like 750 is half of 1,500.
Oh, I understand. I'm just saying it would be significantly
Okay.
reduced by the time you got out that far from a tower. Correct? I'm asking our engineer.
It'd be very significant. It'd actually be even more significant than the 300 that we already have it at.
Correct.
I just prefer I understand that the 300 is not necessarily scientific, but if we're going to make numbers about worries about, I understand notifying about aesthetics. That is something that is very concrete, but I don't know if 1,000 feet, you're talking, close to a quarter mile, fifth of a mile, basically, that now you have to do a circle. I don't know how much time it takes the city to send notifications for that many, if it's an automated system using the GIS system, but that's a lot of houses.
I'm assuming it's on the responsibility of the applicant to provide that list and addressed envelopes. And I would probably agree with Councilor Jones at 750. That's halfway between two towers, and that would eventually cover all the residents that would potentially be affected by towers as they start connecting. That sounds reasonable to the rest of the council.
I was going to have to say, on that, the 750 feet makes sense under the existing ordinance because we would like them not to be located within 750 feet of one another of these cell towers. So the concern that I had when we were thinking about pushing it out further is that you might be sweeping in multiple towers, which then it gets confusing at that point, and the practical reality of it. So it would be an effort to keep the confusion down. The 750 feet would be, I think, inappropriate. Would be appropriate under the existing ordinance.
Okay. So before we continue here, I have seen a couple of hands go up in the audience. I'm happy to let folks speak for a second time. Mr. SBF, I know you've been waiting patiently.
Thank you. I just have one question, and that is, the least favored location for such a tower is a residential area. And why is that? Is that because there is no radiation? Or is it because there's suspect radiation or other emanations? This gentleman that's on the screen here is saying there's no problem with radiation, but that's the least favored location. The dense location of families, they're concerned about that. Why are they concerned about that? Think about that.
Thank you, Mr. SBF. I would like to say that although I agree with my fellow counselors who are engineers, because that is not my field, that there is science on both sides of this, I also come from the school of thought that just because we don't have any reason to think that it's bad doesn't mean that it's good for us. And I think that there's some proof in the pudding in regards to our food supply, which I've done research on myself over the last decade, and how changes in our food that the FDA allowed, that other countries did not, has significantly impacted our society. So I don't personally know that there is science that supports that this is harmful, although, you know, I was someone who advocated to have these towers placed as so that they could still be effective, but away from vulnerable populations. We don't have authority to just say no, unfortunately. So we tried to come up with a compromise that was hopefully as thoughtful as we could. And I think that one of the reasons the residential community was lowered to the last place on the list was because of aesthetics in these communities. And just like you guys had all mentioned, you know, that downtown community is a historic community, and it is considered transition by the city at this point. There are a lot of offices there. I was office prior, but there are a lot of homes, and you know, if we can put these in industrial places where they don't get, they don't look so out of place, then I think ideally that's what would benefit us as a community the most. I did see another hand go up on this side. Mr. Clace, did you want to speak again?
Yes, please. Ron Clace, 37 Allen Court. Question, I guess, directed through you, Madam Chairman, is the 750 feet, was that from healthcare facilities and daycares, preschools, regular schools? Was that, I don't have a copy of the ordinance.
Of existing. So like we can't see into the future, and we couldn't say that a school could choose to move within 750 feet from a facility.
Right.
But we asked that these facilities be located at least 750 feet from.
Okay. That was from a healthcare facility as well? Was that on the list?
I can tell you, hold on.
It's school, preschool. School, preschool, daycare provider established as of the enactment of the ordinance.
Do you have the section?
Yes, it's 82-205, 1A.
Page down, 25.
Which is the order of preference for locating the facilities.
K through 12 school, preschool, daycare provider established as of the enactment of the ordinance.
Who would
So-
do the, I'm sorry, who would do
Healthcare
the
facility
pinning
was
of,
not included.
who would do the pinning of that and the actual measuring? Is that something that that court would do, or?
Yes.
the-
Yes.
So the daycare facility at Cheshire Medical Center is not within 750
That would be
feet?
included. We had that discussion, I'm pretty sure.
So I'm sure it would be included, and it, I'm assuming must fall out of the 750-foot radius, but you could certainly verify that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, I'm Kristen Leach. I live at 37 Middle Street. So it's our corner. And I appreciate the time and energy you're all putting into this, and I appreciate the fact that you're probably as frustrated as we are, that you're trying to lead and help us, and there's not much you can do. But thank you for hearing us. I've been at 37 Middle Street now for 21 years, and my neighbors are awesome. I don't know how much you know, but we've been through a lot. And with rezoning, we didn't want the parking. We've come before zoning and talked about situations in the neighborhood we haven't desired. We've asked for buildings to not go from 3 to 4 units or 2 to 3 units. And we realized maybe there's nothing you can do about this. But it is going to, whether it's science or aesthetics, I think the overall feeling is that it is going to affect our property value, and that that we don't know whether or not it is safe or isn't. That I don't know that that's the question. It's that we really don't want it, and we certainly don't want it visibly on that corner. One thing that is really super sciencey is that I was out walking my dog 2 nights ago. Super fun. It's a beautiful night. And our awesome emergency vehicles were coming back after a call. And our largest fire truck can't make that corner without bumping up over that bump out. If they try, I watched it, I laughed a little bit. If they try to avoid driving over the bump out, which lots of people do, you can actually see in the grass where, yeah. If they try to avoid that bump out, they will ironically swing and hit a fire hydrant. So I would suggest maybe we look into that. And thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you for those comments, for sure. And I would definitely recommend that you follow up with an email to Court and just point all of that out. I'm sure he is at home probably watching us on Zoom right now, but I think making sure that that ends up in writing in the Public Works Department is important. Anyone else from the public wishing to speak again? Okay. So back to our committee for a little bit more conversation. How are we feeling about the potential amendment?
If we're going to go with 750 feet, that's about 5 to 6 times the number of notices that are going to go out than current.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, yeah.
Well, $500.
The $500 application fee is presumptively reasonable. If we are going to go more than $500, we have to go through a justification process.
And doesn't it say in the ordinance that the applicant is responsible for?
I'm just looking for that. I think that's part of the $500 application fee.
Yeah, it's on page 3 of the ordinance section. Wait a minute, that's not it. Oh, I did see it.
I read it earlier too, and I thought that it said that the applicant was responsible for providing addressed.
Page 11, the city shall mail public notice to all persons entitled to notice, including all owners of record. That's 82-208.
Yeah. I think it's 6.25 times as many places, so.
Can I ask a question about
Yes, Counselor Jones?
Tom, can I ask you a question about that? Notification process. When we had the parklets, someone had asked, can we do a notification process? And you had a concern that if someone is missed or something like that, it's on us.
That's always the case.
That's true. But in this sort of situation where this ordinance looks more like sort of the zoning ordinance or a planning board. It's less legislative action than it is almost statutorily required. So if for this kind of purpose and the fact that we are careful, but as was just pointed out, under the section 3A for public notices, where it says 300 feet, the applicant shall submit the mailing labels and pay the fee to cover the cost of the mailing to each person entitled to notice, pay a fee. What I don't know, and I was about to ask the Public Works Director this question, is whether or not paying the fee meant that the cost of the notices came out of that $500.
Can you just point me back to that? Because
Sure,
that's how I read it earlier.
It's
Is it under 5?
82-207.
7.
3. No, I just missed it again. 87. Sorry, I'm getting tired.
Yes, under
3A.
3A. So it does say, in addition, the applicant shall submit 2 sets of mailing labels and pay a fee to cover the cost of mailing to each person entitled to the notice. So when I reread this, that's what I was recalling.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think, can we have clarification whether that
Right, it's part of that.
part of the initial fee or if that's an additional fee? And if it isn't, can we charge it as an additional fee? Would it be considered unreasonable?
Well, it would be an actual cost. like the way we do it upstairs. You know, it's not a fee per se, it's the cost and expense of the mailing.
Okay.
So the application fee itself generally is for the review. It's like upstairs, you know, there's an application fee through community development, and then they pay the cost of the mailings, and those can vary.
So I do think the applicant should bear the burden of that. Yep. Counselor Jones?
Can I say, I think what we should be doing is, we have recommended options here, and looking at option number 2, which is putting on more time to allow the city manager to make further recommendations, because I don't think we should put the numbers in the motion right now. I think we should give her the numbers as part of the background, but she's gonna wanna talk to Court Blomquist, definitely, and everything else, and work out the fees, because of the fees and because of the distance, and come back to us. We're just throwing out what we would like to see right now.
Right.
For the background notes.
My response to that, and I'll get to everybody, I know we've got lots of questions coming up here at the committee, is that our next meeting will not be until November. If we do not come up with some sort of direction that we could put before council, which we would be voting on this next year in '23. So if there were additional changes that we wanted to make later, we would be suspending the rules. I'm not sure how that would occur. Would there be a mechanism for us to suspend our rules in order to rediscuss this?
Yes, exactly the same way you did with the rules of order recently.
Great. Counselor Johnson, first.
No, I like what Councilor
Jones.
My friend said.
Yes.
I wanted to hear what Councilor Giacomo.
Counselor Giacomo.
Yeah, reading his face. Yeah,
Yep.
you're on.
You have the floor.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry. I thought Councilor Johnson was speaking still.
I'm just referring to you.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. My issue with this is it seems like whatever value we pick, it's going to be arbitrary still. And no matter how far out we go, there's going to be someone that's 1 foot farther. And we're not going to capture them. And so using a number that we have established for others, for other notifications, seems to make more sense to me. But I just feel like this is not something that I don't think we're really accomplishing anything by doing this, other than increasing the number of people that end up on a notification. I get that. I guess that's the point. Just notify everyone in the city every time something goes up. But it just doesn't seem to be accomplishing much, and I would prefer, and I would move to accept as informational and move on.
Is that a motion?
I will not be voting for. Sure, I will move. I'll move to accept as communication as informational.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second by Councilor Ormerod. Rebecca Landy?
Does that motion include both communications?
Yes, they're taken together.
Okay, for the minute takers'
Yes.
benefit, yep.
Okay. Counselor Jones?
What does that mean?
So,
What happens? What's the process now?
There is nothing.
We're not giving any directions to staff anymore.
If the motion is adopted and it goes to the city council, and the city council adopts the recommendation, actually, as you know, if it's adopted here, to accept it as informational, generally that happens without much further discussion of the council. That can still happen at the council level, but that would end this process.
yeah, so it would inhibit our ability to adjust the notification distance.
Although it would not trigger the rule.
Correct. Which was originally where I was thinking this might go, because it would give us an opportunity to revisit it again when we had that, because the notification, I agree, is very important, and I see it slightly different than Councilor Giacomo. I do see it as goodwill, and that the community deserves to have notification, whether there's an ability to change the process or not, but I think people don't like being the last one to know. And so when you walk down your street and there's some big change and you weren't communicated to, it doesn't feel good. So there's no harm in requiring our applicants to provide additional notification. I don't see an issue with that. If we do accept this as informational, we could revisit it at any time. We could bring it back at any time, but we wouldn't be affecting that change tonight. Councillor Jones.
Yeah, I kind of disagree that it's a random number picked because, one, it's consistent with the other numbers in the front of the ordinance. And number two is that, as the attorney said, they can't be within more than 750 feet. So I think it's not a random number. It's a good number. If we're going to choose a number, it's a good number to pick.
Okay. Does anyone from the public want to speak about that motion? Yes, come forward.
The numbers, the Councilor Giacomo is right. There's always going to be somebody at 752 feet who doesn't, but I can tell you as someone who in our neighborhood just recently, we've been dealing with, through the zoning board, with a request for a large group home on Summer Street, which would require a variance. And we live 3 doors away from that building, but 206 feet away. And we were not happy not getting a notification. The notion of these tight-knit neighborhoods being treated as in exactly the same way as a neighborhood in other parts of the town where you have much larger lots and distance between the homes, it leaves you, it's a very different feel, believe me. In an older neighborhood like ours, 750 feet would be a very welcome number.
Great, thank you for that feedback. Anyone else? Okay, so I would be asking for a vote. This vote is to accept these 2 communications as informational. And I think we're all clear at this point on what that would mean. So we're going to start with Councillor Jones.
I vote no.
Councillor Bosley votes no.
Councillor Ormerod, yes.
Councillor Johnson, no.
Councillor Giacomo, yes.
And that is 3 no and 2 yes, so the motion fails.
Can I offer a motion?
I would accept a motion from Councillor Jones.
I would move to place the communication from Terry Clark and Councillor Filio on more time to allow the city manager to make further recommendations to the committee based on the comments made to the committee by the petitioners and by the public.
I'll second that. So we have a motion by Councillor Jones, seconded by Councillor Bosley. Do we have any conversation on that motion? Councillor Johnson?
Would that allow us to have, I forget what you call it.
Adjust the butter notification?
Yeah, schedule.
Yeah, that would. It would require a change to the ordinance, which would, I assume you're asking it be brought back to the committee first and
Yes.
then introduced to the council, so it would bring us into the new year.
That's fine. Anyone from the public wishing to speak? Okay, seeing none, I would ask for a vote, starting with Councillor Jones.
Yes.
Councillor Bosley, yes.
Councillor Ormerod, yes.
Councillor Johnson, yes.
Councillor Giacomo, no.
And that is 4 yeses and 1 no, and the motion carries. I believe that is the last item on our agenda tonight. I have to double check because is it? Okay, great. So I appreciate everyone coming out tonight and working through this with us. I hope that you got a lot of your questions answered. And we will be revisiting this again when it comes back before PLD, probably in November, that first PLD meeting in November. Okay. And with that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.